What would it be like if we could eliminate the long, drawn-out uncertainty around breast cancer diagnosis that has plagued the process for decades? As you just heard, I'm the one who's been blessed with being the CEO of Seno Medical for the last 6 years. And Seno Medical is a new medical imaging technology company here in San Antonio. And we've developed an evolutionary step forward in medical imaging that holds the promise of changing how we do breast cancer diagnosis in the future, and also potentially other cancers beyond that. But first, let me tell you a story. Back in 2008, a colleague of mine, Tammy Garcia, got what my wife would call the dreaded call. It's a call that any woman over 40 years of age who's had a screening mammogram just hates to get. The radiologist had seen a suspicious mass in her mammogram, wanted her to come back in for some additional imaging procedures, and then to determine whether she had to get a biopsy or not. Tammy's mind began to race, and she started asking questions like, do I have cancer? Did they catch it soon enough? What am I going to tell my family? Eventually, after 11 weeks, Tammy got her diagnosis. But for that 11-week period, in multiple additional medical imaging procedures, other tests, and ultimately a biopsy that gave her that diagnosis, she spent a lot of sleepless nights worrying about what that outcome would be, having a lot of what-if conversations with her family, and her life was just on pause. This situation occurs all too often in the United States. And it's not because we don't have great physicians, we do. It's just that the medical imaging available to us today falls short of providing the right information to enable the radiologist to make that right diagnosis. So what does this mean for us? In the US, we have 6.5 million women that get that dreaded call every day or every year. Out of that 6.5 million women, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. 1.6 million of those women ultimately go on to need a biopsy. But 1.3 million of those biopsies are negative. So theoretically, they didn't need a biopsy. And the time from the screening mammogram to the time that that biopsy result was delivered averages 7 weeks. So a lot of women are sitting there waiting with their life on pause. But I think we've got something now that we can begin to change all of that. For the last 23 years, I've really focused in on women's health, and a bulk of that time was on breast cancer detection and on breast cancer diagnosis. So when I had the opportunity to come down to Seno Medical and interview for this position, I was really thrilled when I walked into the company and saw an old friend there as their chief medical officer, Dr. Tom Stavros. Tom is truly one of the leaders in breast cancer detection, particularly around ultrasound in the whole world. And he literally wrote the book that most radiologists are trained on. So when Tom and I sat down and started to look at the clinical cases that came out of the clinical study that was done, it just got me excited to watch him get excited. He was really pointing things out that we did not ever have before in medical imaging, and that just made all the difference in the world to me, and so I jumped on the opportunity. For the next 6 years, we really focused on improving that core technology and improving the reliability of the systems that had been developed before I got there. The market had high demands, and we hadn't met those as yet. And the FDA had even tougher requirements for us to get that PMA approval. But ultimately, after 6 years, we did get that PMA approval, and we got it with great claims. So now 1 year later, we are at a point now where our second generation product is ready for prime time. And as you heard, we're getting ready to step into the commercialization phase of this company. So let me tell you how this technology works. What we've developed is called optoacoustic imaging. And what it does is fuse ultrasound imaging with laser imaging into a single modality. And the primary reason for doing that is to provide one thing, and that's functional imaging. With functional imaging, we get a lot more than what X-ray, MRI, and CT provide today, which is primarily just anatomical information. They're able to see abnormalities, but to determine whether that abnormality is malignant or not is very difficult. So with the functional imaging that we provide, it comes in the form of a blood map. So we're able to visualize the blood vessels and superimpose that information on top of the ultrasound so they can actually see the blood vessels that are related to the lesion of interest. There's two pieces of functional information that we get from that. One is the ability to be able to tell whether those blood vessels are at normal levels of oxygen or if they're depleted. And the second one is the morphology of those vessels, whether they're perpendicular to the lesion, and also, more importantly, whether we're witnessing an angiogenic event that's the formation of new blood vessels by a cancer trying to outgrow the normal tissue around it. So with that information, we're able to do a lot more in terms of what we can show the radiologist. So this is a normal ultrasound that they have, and obviously it's pretty apparent that they've got an abnormality that's there. But I defy you to tell me whether that abnormality is a malignancy or not. And that's the dilemma that radiologists have. When you apply the optoacoustic technology to that, you see the dramatic difference there. We can see the blood vessels on top of that ultrasound, real time, and we can tell you that the blood vessels that are there, because we colorize them red, are depleted in oxygen, and therefore clearly a malignancy. So whereas this woman may have gone through several more imaging procedures in the past, now we can send her directly to biopsy because we know the result of that situation. In addition to that, we provide an AI tool, an artificial intelligence tool. The radiologist is seeing things for the first time in these images that they never saw before. So there's a learning curve they've got to go through. In addition to that, it's not a precise science that they're working in imaging. They're making best guesses, particularly in the past. And with this AI tool, they get a firm answer as to a probability of malignancy that's being witnessed in that image. And therefore, they have a much more precise answer and have the confidence to make a definitive answer and a definitive diagnosis for the woman involved. When it came time to put our clinical system into a real-world application, it was a no-brainer for us. We had been working with the Mays Cancer Center here in San Antonio for a number of years prior to even my arrival. And Dr. Pam Otto, who was the chairman of radiology there at the time that we did this testing, I can't thank her and her team more for the valuable information that they provided to us during the course of that. Pam was supposed to be here tonight, and I apologize that she wasn't able to make it, but unfortunately, they had a flat tire on the way here, and they're still out there waiting for AAA. So out of that testing, we came up with 4 critical things that were very apparent and important to us to be able to communicate about our technology. First of all was the confidence in the benign versus malignant decision as you headed toward a biopsy. And that was pretty obvious from what I could show you on the images that were there and the results that we got out of the testing there. The second thing then was to reduce the 17 million diagnostic procedures that are done on those 6.5 million women before they ultimately make a decision to biopsy or not. The third was just the importance of this Senogram, the AI tool that we developed. The confidence the radiologists get from that tool was a huge decision for them to be able to rely on something to make a more concise diagnosis. And then ultimately, we can reduce that 7-week period that women wait on average between the screening mammogram and getting a biopsy result and cut that in half. So at Seno Medical, this is something that we take very seriously. It's personal. Tammy Garcia, that I spoke of earlier, is still alive and cancer-free today, and that's a blessing. But it's more than that, though, too, because we impact the entire healthcare system with what we're doing right now. And so we come to work every day for people like Tammy Garcia and trying to prevent that 11-week waiting period for a diagnosis while her life is on pause. There's no reason for that to happen, and now I think we have the tools to be able to prevent that. Thank you.